Oh jeez. You've really been through a lot, haven't you? Hey folks, MasakoX here. If you're familiar with the likes of Chapter 75 of the Dragon Ball Super manga, then today's topic is definitely much needed. For this, we need to go back and see how we got to that point. The Portrait of a Warrior, Vegeta. We would like to thank Shane Levin, a viewer of one of our roundtables, for this suggestion. I think it's quite safe to say here that Vegeta, now and always, will be hot property. Let's follow Vegeta's journey over the years to find out why Vegeta is the way he is. Now, you may think that this is pointless, but there is a point to this, and it will start to become clear during this discussion and end the end, so bear with us. But before we get started, do like this video and subscribe for more content like this. Here, we like to ensure you have a level head about Dragon Ball, and videos like these are not possible without your kind support. So thank you. Let's get started then, with the first villain that the Prince destroyed, Nappa. And yes, granted, he was pretty beat up at this point, and he was a minion of Vegeta himself, but he saved the Dragon team from the trouble of dealing with him at a later date. We learnt that he doesn't have much patience for the weak, and that he is not beyond backstabbing his own allies. Two traits that are kind of important for the character later on. Now, of course, the next opponent in the Saiyan arc was Vegeta himself, and he was pretty much a game changer, considering that he was the first de facto planet-killing villain of the show. Yes, he was the first baddie in Dragon Ball who could legitimately raise Earth to the ground, having in the anime done it with Alia, scorching it. No other villain could do that outside of magic up until that point. And yes, Piccolo and Roshi could blow up the moon, but, you know, the moon's smaller than the Earth, so technically, that's not as big of a deal. Vegeta, though, was the first one to actually threaten Earth with this kind of punishment, and mean it. And this encounter is amongst the most iconic in the series, showing just how big of a problem a character with Goku's full set of powers could be. Raditz had been bad enough, but Vegeta was on a whole other level. Despite the very impressive skills on display, the Prince lost. I mean, he was fighting the main character after all, and vowed to never change his ways. Yet Goku, being Goku, wanted to face Vegeta again someday, and thus started Vegeta's solo journey and his own little war against Frieza, starting with his first victim, Kui. Through Kui and his demise, we kinda learned about how Saiyan power works. That's Senkai, by the way. But he wasn't a main threat for long, as Jeets quickly dispatched the guy, showing off his gains. Later, during the saga, Vegeta is a reluctant frenemy, trying to push his own agenda, an alliance of common goals in terms of fighting Frieza and his goons, and that allowed the Prince to really legitimately take down some big names in the span of just about a dozen episodes or so that had been giving him grief all of his life. Zarbon, Dodoria, as well as Goldo and Jace. Those were big deals for him. For years, these goons made fun of him for being weak. Who's laughing now? These takedowns are the next steps to breaking the chain of Lord Frieza. And obviously, the other Ginyus put up more of a fight, and the Prince is forced to rely on his reluctant allies for assistance. But still, whenever he wants to be or not, he is on the side of the good guys. And there goes his fight with Frieza. That starts a long line of Vegeta humiliations in the series. We don't cap Chapter 75 though, because remember, as of recording this video, it's not over yet, that battle with Granola. Despite his selfish desire, Vegeta is the one to partially inspire Goku for his own fight with Frieza, and give him some sort of a pep talk. While he wasn't the most heroic character at this point in the story, it is another reason to give Kakarot the motivation to fight. He also starts to acknowledge Kakarot's latent power, having resisted for so long, instead of railing against it. A thought that would trouble him for years to come, and only be recently quelled. After his revival, he started to get sort of salty about being omitted from the fight, and in the anime-specific segments, he steals a capsule corp ship in order to look for Goku himself, trying to find the legendary Super Saiyan and get it himself. Then, he also does some Frieza Force cleaning up, again this is anime exclusive, trying to prove to the minions of the Tyrant that he is in fact dead, and that he is more than happy to make them dead too. As we have proven later on, he turned out to be wrong. Now, depending on the canon, anime or manga, Vegeta returns to Capture Corp 1 year and 8 months after the Frieza saga ended, where he gives up his search for Goku and decides to just wait there. and that around that time, he had his reality shaken once more by the sheer power of future Trunks and what he demonstrates in his fight against Mecha Frieza and King Cold, not realizing that that's his son. So he's sort of half one? I suppose his key sensing abilities are still a little basic at this point, because remember, he somehow learnt that. Somehow. But yeah, 2 Super Saiyans feel a bit much for the prince to handle, causing him to fall into some sort of denial again. After this event, he becomes even more determined to train and surpass this young upstart in Kakarot. He is, like we said, not aware of the familial bonds between himself and the future fighter, and during a training-related incident in the gravity room, he briefly becomes closer to Bulma, which eventually results in a short-lived, for now, romance. In another anime-specific segment, he takes the gravity machine to a distant planet to try and find the form of Super Saiyan out of sheer desperation and hopelessness, and then goes on to destroy a meteor which would have killed him otherwise, due to his weak condition though from his training. I mean, what? He could blow up some planets back in the Saiyan saga, but yeah, I guess he was fatigued at the time, so okay? In the manga, he claims instead that he got Super Saiyan because his heart was, just like Kakarot's, pure evil. Oh, it's cool, but also kinda cringy. But given my past, I'll allow it. Still, believe it or not, this time Vegeta does save the day, as when the heart virus overcame Goku, Vegeta's the one to dominate over 19. He also shows a shocking lack of concern for the lives of Bulma and baby Trunks, his own son, which shocks future Trunks greatly. I mean, come on, I'm sure that would shock baby Trunks if he was conscious. However, he figures out in his head that this young brat is really his progeny. I mean, didn't the lavender hair and eyes not give it away sooner, Veggie Boy? The fact that he was able to transform at such a young age too, as well as his own success, only works to boost his ego. Ego, mind you, that terribly gets bruised by Android 18. Now keep note of the word ego, it all comes together in the end. This, however, motivates him to discover, yet again, a level beyond Super Saiyan, but not before standing for 3 days on a cliff shouting and screaming, thinking about his defeat and crying out profanities most likely. Not only that, but he is now angered by Piccolo's sudden gain in power. He is, however, more than happy to use the River Spirit in time at the same time, along with future Trunks, because short-term gains. And you might have noticed at this point that there are knee-jerk reactions happening all the time with this one. But unbeknownst to his son, he too discovered Super Saiyan 3rd grade, but dismissed it due to its main weakness. It's quite a slow boy. And then what we all waited for, folks, his first encounter with Cell. It starts off with him absolutely decimating semi-perfect Cell, to then being played by perfect Cell. And the worst part of all of this is that Vegeta willingly allowed himself to be tricked. That he was so sure of his own power that he envisioned full power Cell as just a challenge, not a threat. And, he would just win, like he was nothing. This loss finally broke Vegeta's spirit. And while he did train before the Cell games, you could feel right now that he wasn't entirely there. And he was just phoning it in. That he wouldn't really be there for almost a decade. His part in the saga was essentially done. He went into the chamber alone, without Trunks, who would slow him down, disappointed by the lack of progress he had undergone. Vegeta then acknowledges, probably sparked by his own sense of defeat, that nobody in the group is anywhere near Goku's level of power, and is even more frustrated by the Cell Juniors, who are proven to be pretty overwhelming in themselves. Then, what comes next are 3 shockers. First, Gohan erupts with incredible power, truly reaching a level beyond Super Saiyan before Vegeta. Second, Kakarot has to sacrifice himself in order to stop Cell. And third, Cell returns from beyond the grave, killing future Trunks. With one last flare-up, Vegeta tries to take Cell, I'm surprised he didn't go Super Saiyan 2 in fact, but only gets further humiliated. He is however saved from death by Gohan, who sacrifices the use of his left arm. This causes him to apologize to the boy, and realizing a lot of the errors he has made along the way. Hey, at least he is aware of his foul-ups, something which a lot of the fans don't seem to remember sometimes. In the end, he has his part in destroying Cell, as he does distract Cell during his beam struggle against Gohan, finally starting his route to full redemption. That was the turning point. Initially, he vows to never fight again, accepting his new family and home, marrying Bulma, and then deciding to turn over a new leaf. He largely succeeds in doing this, but there's one little thing to remember here. but we're going to get to that later. Ultimately, to him, for a Saiyan, he's settling for 4th place instead of going for the gold. Something which we fans now know is something that Vegeta doesn't do, or at least he doesn't do for long. During those 7 peaceful years, Vegeta is dedicated to training his son Trunks mostly, other than maintaining his own level. He wants the boy to surpass Goku's sons, that now being his goal. When he learns that Kakarot will visit Earth though and compete as well, this gives him some sense of happiness and a chance for a rematch he thought he would never have. Thusly, his zest for life has been rekindled, and the old Vegeta starts to bubble back up to the surface. It is during this time, too, that we see the beginnings of Mentor Vegeta. He is harsh, yes, but he knows when his son needs rest. He is very proud too when Trunks reaches Super Saiyan. He is also a big show-off during the whole punching machine thing and doesn't hold back, completely destroying it, wanting to make a point to Kakarot most likely. He also shows a lot of pride in Trunks when he wins the junior division. However, things start to get complicated after Shin and Kibito pop up. When the heroes have to fight Barbody's minions, Vegeta absolutely destroys Pui Pui. Again, his old self is starting to resurface. Foreboding. During Goku's fight with Yakon, he quickly realizes that his rival had figured out Super Saiyan 2 whilst in the other world, showing him that even despite his training, there was still a gap. Death meant nothing. Nothing had changed. This is when that expected thing happens. Majin Vegeta, as Barbody takes over his mind, sensing an opportunity in the midst of Vegeta's ire and weakness and sense of futility. It is then when Vegeta does one of his most controversial things, attacks the stands of the tournament, almost hurting Bulma in the process and killing innocent bystanders. He taunts Goku to fight him, who agrees after a while. They are teleported away from any place where they could cause harm though, and it's then, here, where Vegeta reveals that he allowed Barbody to take the wheel in order for him to take control. He reveals that he thinks his family and ties to Earth are making him weak. He attempts to converse with Goku like he was confessing to him his true feelings when both of them power up to Super Saiyan 2. But although he learned to enjoy his new lifestyle, it's his Saiyan nature forcing him to not settle. And Goku tries to reason with him about this, but for now, Vegeta brushes it aside. Finally, the fight is ended early due to both of them sensing the extraordinary power of Buu. Vegeta then manipulates Goku into giving him half of a senzu bean, knocking him out cold, therefore winning. Finally, Vegeta decides to go after Buu, feeling guilt of his actions during the tournament. Feeling that the facade has fallen flat and ultimately left him feeling unfulfilled by the rematch he had with Kakarot, he decides to do one last brave act against the monster. Thinking that Gohan was dead, he feels actual remorse and wants to avenge him, but he quickly realizes that he is no match for the pink blob. Surprisingly, he gets saved by his kid, Trunks. Vegeta quickly then realizes what he has to do. He holds his son, tells him that he is very proud, actually knocking him and Goten out in order to leave them under Piccolo's care. After that, he blows himself up to atone for his sins, planning to take Buu with him. Still, this is not enough to kill him, but Vegeta's heroic actions don't go unnoticed. King Yama then allows him to return to have another shot at Buu, though it's a bit salty with Goku, who mocked him for not using Super Saiyan 3 during their confrontation. And finally, the two put their differences aside, having to fuse into Vegito. Of course, the prince is not too thrilled by the prospect of potentially being stuck with Kakarot forever, but this might be the only option left, also being fueled by the will of avenging his family. They get absorbed and defuse, which prompts Vegeta to smash the Potara, describing the experience of being fused with Goku as dreadful. Vegeta is the one then also who figures out the plan of tearing Good Buu from Super Buu and tormenting the monster, giving him a great dose of joy. But once again, the old Vegeta's back, and the emergence of Kid Buu and Earth being blown up is kind of the prince's fault. Oops. During the fights with Kid Buu, Vegeta is mostly a supporting act, but refuses to give up. Watching Goku fight the monster allows Vegeta to acknowledge Goku, finally, as his better, and is finally able to let the rivalry go. Or at least its more bitter, resentful aspects, as we will later see in Super. There, it's mostly like a vestigial tale. There, but not really much of a consequence. He then later devises the Super Spirit Bomb plan, coordinating with the Namekians and instructs them about the wishes. He doesn't want anyone with an evil heart to be revived, and to his surprise, his own halo disappears. And even though he fails to get the people of Earth's help with the Spirit Bomb himself, it's Hercule who becomes the final instrument in the plan that finally allows to put the last villain of Dragon Ball Z to rest. Vegeta's plan does work out, albeit with some outside help. He is also willing to accept Majin Buu as one of the Z Fighters, when he is reminded that he saved his life. This is the moment when the two finally start their rocky friendship properly, Goku and Vegeta, and although they're still rivals, it has much more friendly undertones. He also doesn't accept the money from Hercule, who wants to thank him for saving the world, as he thinks that his family already has enough. Quite a big admission, to be fair. He's also more than willing to take part in the family vacation that he had promised, and to spend some quality time with them. He, of course, wants to appear disinterested, but deep down, he's enjoying this time. The first main concern in this time of peace becomes Beerus, or rather Goku being defeated by him in 2 shots. He is reminded about his childhood experiences and gets absolutely terrified of the cat deity. But despite his fear, no one touches his Bulma. And while he is overpowered, Beerus notices his valiant efforts since there is a history between them. That's going to become important later. And he assists with the Super Saiyan God ritual and observes the fight. Relieved that Beerus had changed his mind, he vows to beat Goku's new form in the future. And also, he's quite angered that no one was able to enjoy his bingo dance routine, as he worked really hard on it. We noticed though, Jeets. Good job. At this point in the story, Vegeta knows that he cannot get much stronger without proper guidance, so he is able to convince Whis to train him for 6 months to see if he can improve. After said time, both Goku and Vegeta become regular students of the Angel. He points out that Vegeta tends to overthink his fights, and that his emotional baggage is holding him down. It looks interesting today when you look at Ultra Ego, eh? Clearly, this was the first rumblings that Whis' training wasn't really ideal for the prince in the long term. The two train for a bit at Beerus' place and return just in time to stop Frieza's invasion. While there, in the anime version, Vegeta taunts Ginyu in Taguma's body, and destroys him, in the laziest move I've ever seen. Vegeta then messes with Goku for a little bit, being quite sure that the two can take the tyrant themselves. Until he transforms into Golden Frieza, of course. He then steps in when Sorbet shoots Goku and saves him, but is being a total tsundere about it. We also learn that Vegeta has also got Super Saiyan Blue, in a bit of an anticlimactic reveal. I still think that to this day. Then he basically wins against Frieza, but then the Emperor rage quits with an Earthbreaker. Yeah, Vegeta technically won, but divine intervention got in the way. And while they are friends, the two still have problems with working with one another. The issue they even joke about during the post-Frieza celebrations. They're aware of this. But they are, however, willing to train with one another for 3 years in the time chamber before the Universal Tournament, so yeah, that's pretty big. And this is when Mentor Vegeta returns, as he gets quite fascinated with Kaba and allows him to realise his true potential. Vegeta learned on his own path of failures and obstacles, and he tends to provoke his students, but somehow he's able to draw out immense potential from them. It's effective, it gets results. That's his style from everything we've mentioned prior to now. He's also very intrigued by the prospect of different Saiyans. Saiyans who might have had a different, more heroic path. And Vegeta also doesn't trust Frost from the very beginning. And ultimately, he's right. He's the one who defeats the cheating fighter in one punch. He's also able to overcome Vegeta and Kaba, but not before coaching him for a bit. The one that stops him though is Hit, where he completely dominates the Saiyan. During this encounter, he is brutally reminded that Goku is always one step ahead of him, as their fight is much more even. Still, at least Vegeta is able to show his teaching skills once again, as he is the one who helps future Trunks to get back into shape. This time, however, their relationship is much less rocky, and though he is hard on him, the young man knows that this is the only perfect way of coming out on top in fights. And this wasn't his father being a jerk. And while Vegeta is pretty sure that he can beat Goku Black by remembering his previous strength, he is caught off guard still by Rose. He does some training though between their two encounters in order to be ready for the final rematch, and he can quickly rebound. When Zamasu becomes threatened by the power of the Saiyans, he decides to fuse. The two have to resort to fusing themselves into Vegeta once more, where of course, Vegeta's reluctant but finally agrees, oh well. They don't win, but in the end, it is enough to break Fuse Zamasu's integrity, which horribly disfigures him, with future Trunks saving the day, which makes Vegeta incredibly proud once more, and the two bid a pretty friendly farewell this time to each other. Here, in Super, Vegeta is doing more good than harm. Definite reversal. One of the biggest character developments for him here, however, comes with the news of the birth of Vegeta and Bulma's second kid. Vegeta would want her to be named Echelot, remember? But as we know, it doesn't work out that way. He also doesn't want to join the Tournament of Power at first because he wants to stay at his wife's side when Bulla is born. Goku, of course, hadn't said to him about the whole universe deletion thing. Then, of course, we speeds up the whole thing of Bulla being born, and Vegeta instantly becomes very protective of his baby girl. He is seen to be actually pretty competent with caring for one too. The prince is understandably not too keen on Goku reviving Frieza or even recruiting him to the team, but still, he has to work alongside them. And as we've said many times, Vegeta is an absolute beast during the tournament, scoring the most eliminations out of anyone. Throughout all that though, he still tries to be a comforting presence for Kaba, and he recognizes the bravery and efforts of other fighters, such as Roshi, after having never acknowledging his very existence prior to now. He's pretty stubborn about Goku, but that's not exactly new. He is, however, unable to fight with Jiren on an even footing, even if he does get some hits on the grey aliens simply out of sheer logic. He does manage to have his shining moment against Toppo though, but this time, his final explosion doesn't kill him, and he's able to knock the second strongest warrior of Universe 11 from the ring. In the end, he doesn't want to go out without a fight, as he is dedicated to defending his family. His relentlessness and honour gain him respect from both Jiren and Beerus. And after the tournament, he is more than willing to unlock Ultra Instinct for himself. He also dedicates to train himself even more, due to the threat of Frieza now being once again alive. Then during his fight with Broly, Vegeta gives some impressive showcases of power, and though he wins the first round, he quickly learns how adaptive the Berserker Saiyan could be. And as we've done individual videos about Vegeta in both the Moro and Granola sagas, we'll try and sum it up briefly here in a few sentences. Vegeta's arc in the Galactic Patrol saga reveals mostly around him trying to embrace his heroic persona, by trying to right his wrongs against the Namekian people, and showing humility by reaching out toward the Yardratians. His new ability, Force Spirit Fission, becomes instrumental in defeating Moro for good, and although he gets defeated, he has a lot to do in this saga. Sure, he doesn't get a win per se, but his presence is hardly wasted. As for current events, Vegeta finally comes to terms with his dual nature and learns how to appreciate himself, finally dropping the emotional baggage by indulging in himself. He got much better results because of it in fighting Granola than Goku did, and although at the time of writing this chapter he's experiencing a setback, we feel that one of the reasons that Vegeta was toying with the Cerulean bounty hunter for so long is the sole fact that he still is viewing him as redeemable. When you look at all of his behaviours towards both Trunks and Kaba, you can see that Vegeta is trying to get his point across to the fighter. All of those past experiences have shaped him into a person he is today. All that made him a character we know and love. So not only does he understand Granola, he can feel that he went through a shortcut to get all through this power. And at the end of the day, we know where Vegeta ends up. A much happier, stabler individual. But boy, what a path this has been. We want to thank you for taking it with us, and with the Prince. By mapping it out here in one video, you can really see the progress he has made. That was the point of the video. But what did you folks think? Did this make everything clearer to you? Do you feel Vegeta's path towards the end of Z is almost over? Leave a comment below, and let's get this discussion going. And I will see you in the next video. Catch you later!